We used to run the largest meetups in the Seattle Tacoma market and stuff for pre-COVID. And then when COVID, and we used to also run the Big Badass Real Estate World Expo, which have over 1,000 people at it and stuff in Seattle. And then when 2020 hit, for whatever reason, we couldn't do those anymore in Seattle. So we then had to shift to virtual. So we shifted to virtual, and we had about 1,900 people at the virtual expo that we did instead in 2020 because we had to. And then we shut down the events company for a couple of years. And then we reopened it last year in 2022 when we created the Limitless Expo. And my partner, Kim McElroy, and I created that one together.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Keeping It Real Estate. Today we have Tarl Yarber on with us, and he is a recovering house flipper with over 600 single-family residential properties purchased, rehabbed, and resold over the last 10 years. He's also the CEO and founder of Fixated Events, Fixated Capital, Fixated Funding, and the Limitless Expo. Tarl, thanks so much for coming on the show.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So maybe you could start with just a little bit of information on how you first got into real estate investing and what motivated you to start Fixated Real Estate.
So I was 20 years old. I'm 38 now. I went to a sell-a-thon. Basically is a big, huge conference. You buy a low ticket price, and when you show up, it's really just deployed to sell you seminars for something else, right? So like they had Tony Robbins at this one. They had Donald Trump there. This is 2005. They had a bunch of big speakers all over. But in between all of the big, huge VIP speakers, they then had somebody come up and try to sell a course or seminar or something like that. So I was one of those guys, 20 years old, super stoked and excited. And this guy comes on stage and starts talking about like success and millions and subconscious reprogramming and all. Anyways, I got totally hooked, ran to the back of the room, pulled out my American Express charge card, not credit card, because I was a college student. And they basically, I put $1,500 on it, which was like, might as well have been $15,000 or $150,000 for me at the time. Never saved $1,500 in my entire life by then. Put it on the charge card, which meant I had like 60 days to pay it back, and like freaked out. And then I was like, okay, well, this is a personal development seminar. I need to go find a way to pay this now. So they had another, this is how I got in real estate now. Then they had another course that I saw out there on the program that said how to turn $10 into $10,000 in 30 days or less. And I'm like, sweet, I need to make at least $1,500 in 30 days or less, 60 days minimum to be able to pay back the seminar I just bought. So I went to this little breakout session. It was about wholesaling real estate, assigning contracts. This lady had like an overhead projector, and she had like these, like the little, I don't know if you remember overhead projectors, but the plastic film, like of copies of checks that she made assigning properties, right? So $10,000 check, $5,000 check, 50, like all this stuff. And I'm 20 and I'm like, sweet, I could do this. So I spent another $1,000, about $900 on like just CDs and books for wholesaling real estate. I'm like, all right, now I'm $2,500 in, and I better get this thing done if I want to pay this credit card back, basically. And that's how I got started in real estate.
So how was the seminar for $1,500? I mean, did it do what you hoped it would do?
So the $1,500 seminar had nothing to do with real estate. That was just personal development. It was run by a guy named Marshall Silver. And funny story on that, he's actually a very close friend of mine now, but it was totally subconscious reprogramming stuff and how to think like the rich and all this stuff. The books and CDs I bought for about $900 was all on wholesaling and assigning contracts for real estate. So I just dove into those things. That lady had like a follow-up thing that they did, like a one-day thing, I don't know, 3 months later, 4 months later. And she had 300-400 people in that room. And I just remember being 20 years old. And she's like, how many people have actually gone out there and knocked on doors and done stuff so far since that? I was one of like 5 people that raised their hands. And I'm like, I'm naive, dude. Like I'm thinking like I'm the worst person in this room. I'm the only one probably doing the least amount. And apparently most people buy these things and never do anything with them. So
yeah, I would agree with that. Seems like that seems to be the truth for most folks. So of the 1,500, I just want to ask real quick. One was mind development. One was more of actual stuff. What moved the needle more for you, or were they both worth the money, or what's your reflection on it?
It depends, man. Like I would say definitely getting into the real estate, of course, obviously the wholesaling one, right? But I grew up around a lot of just nobody that thought about money mentality correctly. And, we grew up in like upper, lower income. So we fluctuated on that line between like, okay, we're at lower income. Okay, we're at lower middle. Okay, we're at lower income. Okay. Like we were always there most of my childhood. Nobody in my family owned a business. No one in my family invested in anything. No one in my family did anything but go to like a W-2 job, which is nothing wrong with that. I just didn't want to be broke. For whatever reason, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 17. I looked for stuff like that constantly. And this just kind of fell in front of me. The guy just said the right things and got me to jump out of my seat and run to the back.
Nice. Right on. Well, that's cool. So what drew you specifically to the fix and flip model initially? Because that's how you got your start really from there, correct?
Yeah, from wholesaling real estate, I did about 3 deals, 2 little mini ones by knocking on doors in Sacramento, and then a big one, $100,000 assignment for wholesaling land up in Smith River, California. And it was a 40-acre property. Between 2005, 2006, I did 3 deals, and that was it. And then we made our $100,000, and I'm like, I hate this, and I stopped. So I didn't get back into it until late 2010. And 2010 is when I pretty much went completely headfirst, dived into it. And that's all I've been doing since.
So you go in 2005, 2006, you make 100 grand. Like, I'm done. I hate this.
I hated it.
What did you do from 2007 to 2010?
Most of 2006 to 2010. I did what any 21-year-old would do, and that's become a financial planner. So which is totally ridiculous. Like on my height, I had about 76 licensed agents, ran a brokerage. I really worked my ass off, dropped out of college, all that stuff. But reality is back then, like professional licenses, in my opinion, like don't mean anything, like for the most part, other than it's a state regulated requirement. Just because somebody has like a Series 6 or Series 7, or they're calling themselves a financial planner, it doesn't mean they actually know what they're talking about. So like, that's all I'm going to say about that during that time period. But you can go get your licenses. You can go professionally get licensed, and you can go like start telling 40-year-olds how to manage their finances when you're 21. And if you know a little bit more than the 40-year-old, they listen to you. So here's this broke kid telling people what to do, right? So I did that. I was actually very good at it, but it wasn't something that I enjoyed forever. So it's just, I got back into real estate in 2010 and went hardcore after that.
So let's go to 2010. You went hardcore. What does that look like? And give me an example of like kind of how you scaled from 2010 to now as far as, deals done.
Yeah, this is where it gets weird. I didn't have a normal start in it. Were you involved in real estate back then or much?
I was not, no.
Okay. So 2010 was like the Wild Wild West. 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, like anything that was going on during that time period was all bank-owned properties, REO, things that foreclosure, auctions, that kind of stuff. Short sales were huge, and everybody was just making stuff up. The banks didn't really know how to process all the volume that they had as much. Fannie Mae was changing the rules constantly. You had Ocwen, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, which outsourced everything to PAS. You had all these third-party properties, or you had these third-party asset management companies that banks, like smaller banks, would send their REO properties to manage, to try to get them off the books. Like everybody was making stuff up. And you can get away with a lot of stuff back then. So meaning like nobody just wanted to get rid of the properties. Nobody knew what they're doing. So for me, like I got involved with a company that was called a service area manager for Fannie Mae. They were based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. We basically did the construction and rehab for Fannie Mae REO property. So basically, Fannie Mae would foreclose on a property if it didn't go to auction, and they just took it and kept it on their books. It would become REO, real estate owned. And so they had these properties just sitting there, like just tons of them. And each county, they would assign a certain amount of realtors to these REOs to like maintain, and these would be realtors doing it, until they decided to list them on the market. If they listed them on the market, or was going to list on the market, the realtor would do a BPO, broker price opinion, and tell Fannie Mae saying like, hey, I think we should repair these 15 things in order to make it a FHA approved loan so we can sell it to a homeowner. Or they'd go like, this place is messed up, you should just sell it to an investor, right? If Fannie Mae said, cool, go fix it, then they would have to send it to what's called a service area manager, SAM contractor, which was an approved contractor for Fannie Mae in that county. Charter Home Alliance was the company that I was associated with. I was their national sales manager at the time, came on with them. And basically we would just do everything we could to make sure that when Fannie Mae said, go fix a house, we were the contractor that Fannie Mae was choosing. All of a sudden, here's me involved in this big thing, working in REO. And my role basically at the end of the day was become friends with all these realtors, go source tons of contractors in many different states that can do the work for us as the construction crews were concerned, make best friends with REO real estate agents, go make best friends with asset managers, go make friends with Fannie Mae to get them to make sure we open up in new counties. And I'm all of a sudden the networked guy holding the connections to massive teams of contractors, some of the best REO agents in different markets, as well as having connections with asset managers directly with the bank. And I'm like, we should start flipping houses. And so because we had all the infrastructure set up. And so by late 2010, early 2011, me and 2 other guys basically started using all my connections and started buying properties. So I never had a first flip. like we bought like 9 the first month. So, and we just kept going and never really stopped until 2014. We had a business partnership failure. And so we did a few hundred deals. Yeah, 2014, me and the two guys broke up. And then and it was the three of us for those years. And then at the October 2014 is when I started Fixated Real Estate. So February 2014 to October 2014, I didn't do any real estate. I went and got my EMT. I was going to become a firefighter because I hated real estate. Never really liked it. And then I got suckered back in by a fund that I did business with to say, hey, partner with us to go buy more houses. So I started Fixated Real Estate October 2014, and then did a joint venture deal with a fund. They basically gave me a bank account for 15 million, and I started buying single family homes, and we would JV on them. So we'd split the equity. The fund would take title, but then we'd have a JV agreement on each property. That lasted about eight months. And then I'm like, I don't want to be partners anymore. I'm still friends with these guys. I'm just going to go off and do this stuff on my own with my own company. And that was that. So gotcha. So that's the very, very fast condensed version of a lot of chaos over a period of time. So,
and how have you been you've been on your own since then, and how's that been going for you so far?
That's better. Like we then focused on Seattle, Tacoma market, and then Portland were the 3 markets that I chose. Once in beginning of 2015 is when I really started focusing on those 3 markets, and then just became one of the top house flippers in the Seattle, Tacoma area. And we started doing other things, started investing in other avenues, and then we started an events business out of nowhere by running meetups. We just got really integrated with the Seattle, Tacoma real estate like people and stuff for the most part, and I just had to start having a good time.
Okay, so bringing it back a little bit, it sounds like you really got kind of your in or your go with that company that was dealing with a bunch of these REO properties. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So we were the contractors for the REO properties, which then allowed me to be kind of the point of contact with so many other key people during that time frame to get access to other properties for the most part. So it's not something that a lot of new people can relate to, because that time won't ever happen again, and that opportunity won't be there again. So
yeah. If you could go back, would you do it differently, or
hell yes.
You would do different? What would you do?
But we wouldn't flip these things for so cheap. We didn't keep any of them. So you're talking in between late 2010 to 2014, when my partners and I broke up, we did hundreds of deals and we didn't have a single rental. We just flipped. And so we either flipped them as a fee, like we would get things under contract and then sell them to a hedge fund, or we would take title for like a period of time and then flip it to another fund, or we would just buy it and sell it to an end user after we fixed them up and did like cosmetic fixers. We didn't appreciate at all what we had. Like I did, it was all new to me. So I'm like, this is fun. Like, woohoo, like we're just making money and we're flipping houses and they're everywhere. This is easy, right? It wasn't easy, but it was easy to get deals, but there was no future thinking. It was all like 3 months, 6 months, 3 months, 6 months. Like it was no long-term thinking at all on it. It was like, this one's going to make us 10 grand. That one's going to make us 20 grand. This one will make us 7. That one will make us 40, right? Like that's all it was. It was just numbers on a spreadsheet versus like, let's keep these things. And whenever I hate myself, I go back and look up some of those addresses and find out how much they're worth today. And if we would have just kept some of them, it would have been way more intelligent.
Yeah, got it. So looking back, you wouldn't have been the flipper. You'd have been the let's buy these, renovate these things, and cash flow them.
Yeah, I would have done a lot more of that. I would have done I would have done that. We still got to flip some, right? But we definitely should have been keeping some of those, and we never did. We never did anything with long-term thinking at all.
Got it. Okay, well, that's a good point for listeners to keep in mind. I mean, you've flipped, and you were one of the not biggest flipper company in Seattle, Tacoma, and Portland. So you've been down that path deep. And looking back, shortcut was at least keep some for cash flow and don't be in and out of everything. You guys must have had an insane capital gains tax bill at the end of the year, huh?
Yeah, yeah, that's another thing. I remember the first like big tax bill I got, and I was talking to my CPA and I'm like, hey, how do I like not pay this type of stuff? And he started laughing at me. And he's just like, it's always funny when people start making real money. The first thing that they always say is like, how do I stop paying taxes? And I'm like, I didn't understand like at the time what was going on. But strategies changed. I didn't keep my first rental until 2016. And then it started clicking for me in 2016. So
gotcha. And how many folks do you have at your team now that when you guys are doing what you're doing, how many people do you have at your company?
We've scaled down dramatically. Like we haven't bought anything actually since September, October 2022. When the market started shifting, I wanted to stop buying in the Seattle market. I moved here to Austin. And I was looking for an opportunity to tell the team we're not going to buy anymore. And when the rates went up, I was like, cool, here's my opportunity. And that has more to do with lifestyle choices and less to do with the actual market. We're going to start buying again here, I think next month, actually, in different markets. But to answer your question, when we were moving and going, really the claim to fame that like I had is that we always had a small team, and we might have 27 active rehabs going on in the Seattle market. And you're talking most of our rehabs and construction between 2015 and 2022, were anywhere between our average was between $60,000 and $80,000 in construction and rehab, all the way up to $300,000+ for large gut out jobs that we would do. So we weren't doing cosmetic stuff at all. A lot of stuff we were doing was pretty heavy renovations. But even if we had 20 projects going on at a time or 27 projects going on at a time, we never had more than 4 people besides myself on the team.
Yeah. What's the secret? How do you build an efficient team like that with 4 people on the team?
I had a business coach tell me that the reason why I'm good at real estate is because I don't like real estate. I actually do not enjoy most of the real estate process. Sourcing properties, dealing with contractors, renovation budgets, renovation schedules, which is actually a ton of real estate is involving around renovation, believe it or not. As you know, as a multi-family value add person, I never enjoyed any of it. I didn't even care when the house was finished, like to go see it. I didn't need to go like, ooh, look what we did. Like I just like, when can we go to the bank? Right? Like, how can we get paid? Right. So because I never liked it, my business coach told me at the time, like, that's why I'm so good at it, is because I would outsource or get other people to do everything. And there's nothing I was tied to, like nothing that I would hold on to. So it was all about systems and processes for me. It was like, okay, here's a process. How quickly can I get this off my plate? Here's a situation or problem. How quickly can we never do that problem again? And then do it over and over and do it the right way over and over again, so we can not repeat those mistakes. We've made every mistake you can imagine flipping houses, but we don't make them more than once. So it's about lanes. It's about very clear processes and guidelines. We utilize a number of pieces of technology to help systemize and process that stuff out. It's also about going slower a little bit too. I think that's probably the biggest lesson I had in my career, is to learn to go slower. Too much rushing in is what creates the mistakes. And I'd have a lot of friends that would flip houses and they'd get so many change orders and so many issues. And looking back, a lot of reasons why is because they didn't really have a plan, or they would just rush into it. And then they'd look up and go, oh man, we shouldn't have knocked out that wall, or we missed this, or we missed that. And they're getting change orders. So we'd much rather sit there and take a few weeks, even if it takes that, after we buy a property, before we start anything, because we would plan it all out. So we slowed it down. We slowed down to speed up, if that makes sense. Which meant that we didn't have to have, okay, we bought the house, get the crews going, which meant you needed more people to maintain that kind of velocity, versus if we slow down a little bit. So maybe a project, if we sped up, would take 60 days, but require us to have another 2+ employees if we're doing a bunch of projects. Or that same project takes 60 days, could take 90 days, and I can have less employees. If my holding cost is low, it's actually, my holding cost at that house might only be $2,000 a month or $3,000 a month. Well, 2 more employees might cost me 6, 7, 8, $10,000 a month, right? So it's really not worth it. And then the stress you add it. So it took time for us to kind of balance that out a bit. I don't know if that makes sense, but like slowing down to speed up, basically.
Yeah, sounds good. So I don't know if you guys heard that. What I got out of that was systems and processes. How can I get it off my plate quickly and do it over and over again, and not make the same mistake ever again? So I thought that was super valuable, and something for us to keep in mind of, if you're looking to scale, get the system and process in place. Who can take care of it? How can you do it right and do it consistently right to make sure you don't make the mistake again? So that's great.
Totally.
Yeah. Can you maybe elaborate any key systems that you have in place or have used to allow to run your business from your phone, and how you with your travel?
Totally. Yeah. So that's the big thing. We started doing a lifestyle business for the most part in 2018. My wife and I just started traveling a ton and working less, and trying to do everything we can to run off our phone for the business. And that was just making some decisions. So we use 3 major pieces of technology to do that for us and our company. And that's Dropbox, Asana, and Smartsheet. Each one has its own purpose. I'll say that like the simplest thing for people to start out with, whether it's even in multifamily, it doesn't really matter. Like you have to have technology like to do this right these days. Any kind of project management software, you can utilize, there's tons of them out there. The best advice I can give on any of this is that there is absolutely not one magic software that's going to solve all your problems in real estate, right? It doesn't exist, so don't look for it. What you got to find is that, like what I've found at least, is you find whatever works best for you for that thing that you're looking for. So like Dropbox, I like better than Google Drive, even though Google Drive is fantastic. Cool, pick one, right? So Dropbox is for file storage. Sweet. So when we take photos of properties, they go in Dropbox. When we have purchase and sales agreements, title reports, and so forth, that all goes in the Dropbox, right? If we have any kind of contractor bids, invoices, whatever, they get stored in Dropbox. So Dropbox is a storage system, but you can systemize that, right? You can have a way that you address your properties, so that way you can find them quickly. Each one of those properties should have subfolders that are the same for every single property, so you're not making it up as you go. Something as simple for us when we take pictures of our properties on our quality control process that we do, we don't need to like timestamp the photos so much, but we can timestamp the folder that we put them in, and we do that. So we have like a very most basic naming thing for photos in a folder. We just put down the date. We put down what was happening at the property. Like, let's say it'd be like September 28th, 2023, drywall, and then Sarah, right? So it'd be the date the pictures were taken, what was going on generally at the property, drywall, and who took the pictures. And then would just go inside the Dropbox folder for that day. So then when we go look at our property, if we've had it for 3-4 months, we could just see every single week a folder of the property, and we could see the progress of like, oh man, I need to find out what's behind that wall because we lost an outlet. Great. Well, let me go to the pictures before it says drywall, right? So you can see what's there, or when it says electrician on it, right? We can just go straight to the pictures and figure that out. So pictures have saved us tons and tons of headaches over the years in construction and rehab just by storing them in Dropbox. Asana we use for project management, and we also use Smartsheet for all of our scopes of work and major QC checklist stuff and accounting hard cost sheets and things like that. So.
Got it. Well, that's good stuff. Those are some good pointers, folks, to look into to help you stay organized. Maybe tell us a little bit more about Fixated on Real Estate, the meetup, and the Pacific Northwest Big Badass Real Estate Expo. Like, how did these come about, and what is the main goal behind these events?
We used to run the largest meetups in the Seattle Tacoma market and stuff for pre-COVID. And then when COVID, and we used to also run the Big Badass Real Estate World Expo, which have over 1,000 people at it and stuff in Seattle. And then when 2020 hit, for whatever reason, we couldn't do those anymore in Seattle. So we then had to shift to virtual. So we shifted to virtual, and we had about 1,900 people at the virtual expo that we did instead in 2020 because we had to. And then we shut down the events company for a couple of years. And then we reopened it last year in 2022 when we created the Limitless Expo, and my partner, Ken McElroy, and I created that one together. So we created the Limitless Expo in 2022 to kind of solve more of a what's going on, not just with real estate, but what's going on with the financial markets out there, what's going on with the Fed, what's going on with the inflation, what's going on, how do you build wealth in America today, not just in real estate. Real estate is definitely a heavy thing that we do at Limitless, but it's a wealth conference, not just a real estate conference. And that was actually the brainchild of Ken. He's like, plenty of people do real estate conferences. Nobody's doing like a true, like no BS wealth conference where you can't sell from the stage. We get experts up there. We get people actually doing it. We get real entrepreneurs, real business owners, real people that are actually know what they're talking about, and not just people that are getting paid to talk and explain what the heck is happening. So we can take advantage of those opportunities and help more people do that as well. So that's what the Limitless Expo is. We've done it for 2 years. This last one we had 1,700 people at just a couple months ago at Scottsdale, Arizona. And the next one's coming up in 2024, not till late August of 2024.
Yeah, so that we were there at the Limitless. And I was extremely impressed with what you guys put on, and a lot of the speakers. There were several stages, which was kind of unique. So you had a lot of different things you could pick and choose, but overall, just remarkable content. So appreciate you guys putting that on. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, and maybe you learned stuff from Ken, but over the years, what have you learned from mentoring and other real estate investors, and what common challenges do you see them facing today?
I've been mentored by Ken and other people like him, and very fortunate for that, big time. And kind of what I've found though, like when it comes to mentor relationship kind of situation, right now we have a lot of people that were in my industry, like the single family kind of aspect, where you have a lot of people that were crushing it with flipping and keeping and like BRRRRing, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And they just can't do that right now, or they can, but they can't do it with as much confidence. So a lot of players, quote, quote, players over the last 10 years have actually pulled back. Some of them last year were like, I don't know what to do with myself, just because they were making all their active income just to live and pay their bills and stuff through flipping houses. And then all of a sudden, or they get caught with like 7 or 8 active projects that they can't get out of, and they found themselves stalling. I think today, what's now happened with guys like that, or women like that even, is a lot of them are kind of like hesitant. They sit on the sidelines, they're kind of watching. Whereas a number of people that got through that little like hiccup in June, July, August, September of last year, anything you buy today in single family, otherwise, you can plan off of the current market. It's most of the challenges came when you bought in April 2022. And you're stuck with that project in July 2022 when all of a sudden the market changed dramatically. Those are the people that were struggling. Me, myself, I lost $150,000 on 2 projects last year in that exact scenario, right? Seattle had certain markets that dropped dramatically. I had a house that went from 1.6 to 1.2 within a matter of just a couple months as far as ARV. So we sold it for 1.2. That was fun. I mean, we could afford that, but you get enough projects like that, you can lose everything, right? So, and there's people that did. So I think right now, like, there's a lot of sideline looky-loos, what's going on. And there's a lot of fear. And I also think that each market's different. Like if you think about multifamily commercial, it's a very, very different real estate industry right now or market today than single family is, right? It's not the same. And so you have different problems, and you have different, like single family, it's kind of hard to find a good deal right now, but they're out there. But I think that the challenge with single family is there's people are hesitant because they're hoping for a crash. Like, I don't think there's going to be for a single family, not anytime soon. On the other side, if you're multifamily, as you know, it might suck right now if you bet on refinancing last year and you had bridge debt, right? Your cap rate changes dramatically. You lose value from that. You're in the middle of construction, operations, projects, things like that. The property might be fantastic. The tenants might be paying all their rents, right? It might actually like be executing to plan, except the cap rates changed and the interest rates changed. And now you're like, I can't refi. Right? I can't cash out. I'm stuck with bridge debt, like something's going on. And it's not anything more than that sometimes, right? And that sucks, right? So when that happens. And so it's a different story. So I think the challenge is that like going into the future, definitely will be opportunity in multifamily commercial, for instance. But it's not going to be like it was in 2008, 2009, where those multifamily commercials are like just messed up properties. Like these are going to be like nice properties that unfortunately get taken back from the bank. And then the next buyer resets the cost basis. The debt resets the debt and the cost basis by buying it cheaper, right? So who knows when that's going to happen or what's going to happen with that or what's that going to look like, but we're on track for that. Single family, who knows?
Just to talk a little bit about that, the transition last year in March of 2022 to June of 2022, we put a deal on the market, a 410 unit deal that we were selling, and the buyer put it under contract, and he had 850,000 of non-refundable earnest money. But by the time he was trying to close 8 months later, and the struggle that he went through, wasn't able to get the deal done. And luckily we were on the receiving end of that. But if you were buying during that time, if you couldn't execute quickly and you didn't use the right debt, you're in a really tough scenario situation. So deals where, if you know what you're doing and you have the right team and you have access to equity, now the valuations have completely reset, your debt's reset. Now you're buying in a different period of time where everything has changed, your basis has changed, and it's much safer than it was, late 2021. So it's interesting to hear, multiple people come on the show and have the same kind of story about how things transitioned so much during that time.
Yeah, it sucked, right?
Yeah. That's some good information. Maybe you could share a memorable real estate deal that taught you an invaluable lesson, and just see if there's anything that comes out of that.
My least favorite property ever. So the reason why it's memorable is because it was like kind of like a big kick to my ego in a sense. And it was a big proving point that no matter how good you think you are, stick to your systems and processes and don't go out of the freaking box. You're not supposed to buy properties on emotion, right? So don't do that. If you want to go lose a bunch of money, go buy properties on emotion. So I go to this property here. We opened up in Portland. We'd been doing a bunch of stuff already. And we had this bright idea that we're going to like do this unique marketing strategy down there to go find more properties. Part of that was like partnering up with local wholesalers, people that assign properties under contract. And I got in it with this one wholesaler dude. And just to prove to him that I was right, I bought this property. Now, not getting into like why or how it was sourced or anything. I bought it because I wanted to make a point, right? So hubris was getting in the way, right? A little bit on that one. So do that. Cool. Then at the time, I only had one contractor that I focused on in the Portland area, and I knew I had a special deal, but all my eggs were in that contractor's basket. I'm a big fan of not doing that, but at that time I did because it was easy. This guy just did the work, whatever. Didn't have to manage it. So what happens is he bids the property, bids it really low. I didn't involve my team at all in any of this. I was doing this all personally without involving anybody on my team because I can handle this. I'm Tarl. And so I take the numbers of his rehab budget. I bought the property to prove a point to somebody else. I didn't involve my team so far. Well, 3 weeks into the deal, the contractor that I had kind of had some major personal issues and pretty much like disappeared out of nowhere. Like he was just gone. He had some of the deposit, not a lot of it, which was fine. But now all of a sudden I bought a house that I think it's going to cost me 40 grand. And every contractor I bring in is like, this is 80,000. So instead of dealing with the problem, I then ignored the problem because I didn't want to bring my team involved, right? I was like, I'll handle this. I'll fix my own problems. That's cool. I'm freaking Tarl, right? So I had my team still working on, we still had, I think at the time we had 18 or 19 projects in the Seattle market that we're working on. So I'm like, all right, I'll just go deal with those. Those are going to make us money. This other one, I'll just ignore. Well, the problems don't go away if you ignore them. They just sit there and get worse. So holding costs stacking up, I drive down to the property. I don't drive my properties, but I had to go drive this one, right? And so I had to go check it out. I had to go meet the contractors myself, which I don't do in my part of my processes. Other people do that. Let's just put it this way. It was the first house I ever lost money on. So 14 or 15 months later, the house finally sells, right? A project that was a cosmetic rehab took me 14, 15 months to finally get rid of. I lost $86,000 on the first house I ever lost money on ever. And this is talking like 500 plus deals by then. And the first one I lose money on is 86,000. 100% of everything that went wrong. I even went down there on a weekend with my project manager from Seattle, and we went and worked on the project ourselves. I have never worked on any of our houses ever, but this one house. For some reason, I thought it was a great freaking idea. Every mistake known to man, and I paid for it at the end. And I'll never do that again. So like that, just all hubris, all stupidity.
You got sucked into it on emotion and said, hey, I got to buy this, forget the numbers, or your numbers were inaccurate, unfortunately, because
yep,
contractor, you got in over your head and there was no way out. You're taking a dang loss.
Yeah, I should have just like got rid of it way earlier. If I was going to lose 86 grand 15 months later or whatever it is, I could have probably lost 40 grand earlier if I would have gotten rid of it sooner and sold it to somebody else, right? But I kept saying I'll dig myself out of this myself, right? And that didn't happen. So I just dug deeper.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. So let's just say for folks that are just starting out in real estate investing, what are a few pieces of advice you might give them based off your experience and pain you've gone through?
Know what your niche is in a sense. And a lot of people hit me up on whether it was social media, email, phone, whatever, it doesn't matter, like a meeting person. They're like, I can't find any good deals right now is always a thing that I hear from new people. And I don't always say this because I'm not always rude, but I was like, cool, well, what's a good deal? Like, what's a good deal to you? And anytime I have challenged people on that, most of the time they can't answer that. And anything that makes sense, anything that makes money, like that's not an answer. So know your buy box, know specifically what you're looking for, and you're more likely to find it. Once you have your buy box, whatever that is, make sure that wherever you're looking for that property is in a market that will support your buy box. And if you're looking right now for 30% cash on cash, single family fix and flips for a project, and you're doing that in, I don't know, Seattle, Washington right now, ain't happening. Sorry. So that market doesn't support that. Maybe 15 to 18, maybe you'll get lucky at 20. If you're looking for rental property to cash flow the 2% rule, you're not going to get that in Seattle, Washington. You're not going to get that in downtown Portland. You're not going to get that on any major city, right? But you could get that maybe somewhere else, right? So just make sure that your buy box fits where you're looking as well. So know what it is and make sure your market fits that.
That's great right there. I mean, know what you're looking for. Usually I would agree. If you can't find a deal, are you in the wrong market, or do you not really know what a good deal looks like? I think that's invaluable right there. And then does the market support what you're trying to do? So awesome totally. Stuff. Yeah. If you could go back in time when you first started in real estate, what advice would you give yourself?
Enrique, he's got, I don't know, 300-400 rentals or something like single family in Yakima, Washington. And the difference between him and I is that like he bought all those rentals by like budgeting and like having to process financials and get really good with banking, meet with bankers on a regular basis and get lines of credit and all this stuff. And then like, if we put $10,000 in this property, we'll get an extra $1,000 a year in rental income. So that's a 10% return on that 10 grand. I never thought that way. at all ever when flipping houses heavily for at least the first like 6-7 years. I wish we would have considered rental sooner because it would have made us smarter financially sooner as well, right? So long term. So budgeting, financials, and so forth is huge. Learning that if you're an investor, you're in the money game. So learn money, right? Don't just learn real estate. That's not the same thing. Get really good at the money part and the financials. And do your financials. Make sure you're filing your taxes on time and you're tracking all that stuff because it catches up to you. The people that I've seen that have struggled the most financially in real estate is the house flipper crushing it today that's ignoring that stuff and putting it off till tomorrow. Whenever I've coached or mentored somebody, most of their issues is because they don't know their business cash flow. They don't understand, not their property cash flow, but their company cash flow. They don't even know what that is. And so they don't know how to manage it. They don't have any kind of balance sheets or financial statements or anything like that. So it's very important to know where you are and where you're headed.
That's great advice. Any specific resources, books, courses, mentors that you would say were instrumental in your success that you'd recommend to others?
There's 3 books that help me how I think through my processes. The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And that's not because of like, I'm going to work 4 hours a week. It's because he has a lot of really unique ways of thinking about reducing work and being very, very effective with your time. And that's the best way to read that book, in my opinion, is to do that. And then the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, great book about, basically how to make effective checklists. He uses the medical industry as an example throughout that. And then the 3rd book that I recommend the most is The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. That book has a lot more to do with what's your one thing, what's your highest and best use in the business. For me, it was networking, and it took really penciling and realizing that I can outsource everything else. But networking is the thing that I need to focus on the most in order to benefit my business and make it easier for everybody.
Awesome. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
2 ways. Instagram at Tarl Yarber. I do actually somewhat check my messages on that thing, but and then also tarlyarber.com if you want to be part of our newsletter text message stuff that we put out as well. So.
Well, thank you so much, Tarl, for being on. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode. Subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to leave a rating and review, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks, Dan.